Hey guys, welcome to Did You Get That on Film? On this podcast, we deep dive into horror movies, and so it is full of explicit content as well as spoilers. Please be advised. Now, let's get to the show.
This is Did You Get That on Film, where we discuss characters in terrible situations that we never find ourselves in. I'm your host, DP. With me always is someone who is sick and tired, and I mean sick and tired, of this remake trend. My friend Ruth. Ruth, we are doing a remake today after a week of news of remakes.
We're doing a remake. It is true. And we are heavily experiencing remake fatigue.
We are remake fatigued, and if we're not remake fatigued, we are requel tired.
Yes, it has been a long week. So I think the thing that really pushed us over the edge was the announcement of the American Psycho remake.
Oh my god, guys.
I'm not too excited about that one. I think that it should kind of stay in the past. I don't know.
I don't think it's necessary. Who asked for that?
That's a good question. Who asked for it? I am not sure.
So if we're not hearing about American Psycho, we are hearing about something that's just breaking my heart. Is The Crow.
The Crow, yeah.
Being requeled or retooled or reimagined or
It's a reboot. I was very surprised to hear that one just because I just feel like that movie, it's kind of, it's a cult classic. The people that love it really love it. I mean, it's like very near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, especially because of how tragic Brandon Lee's death is. It's like a tragedy on top of a tragedy because it's also very tragic, the death of his father. And so it's just a lot. And so to take it and then reboot it, and I don't know, it could be good. They could change the story. They could keep a universe where Brandon Lee's character is in the lore. We don't know, so it's like I can't really judge it from here, but I was really kind of surprised.
I hope they do keep Brandon as Eric Draven, in a way that Tony Todd is always going to be Daniel Robitaille.
Right.
I'm probably not going to see it in theaters, but eventually it will stream on one of the many streaming services that we collectively all have.
Right.
So we'll catch it then, but yeah, those two for sure. And there's some other ones, I think, but those were the two big ones. And it just made me think about what almost at this point, more than 20 years ago, that first time when the reboot trend started with Chainsaw Massacre was the first one, right?
There's been obviously remakes. We just did a post on Instagram about big remakes.
Yeah.
The biggest ones, I guess, arguably the best ones, like, for instance, The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing is a remake.
Right.
Obviously, that's a pinnacle example, right? Like, that's the very best end of the spectrum. And so then, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a remake of this. It's a 70s remake of a 50s movie. They remade The Blob. Those are kind of like the classic remakes. But in the early 2000s, yes, like with that Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I really like. I thought that it was a really, really, really well done remake. But there was an explosion of remakes during that time. And, they had, like, The Crazies, The Hills Have Eyes, that, remember A Nightmare on Elm Street.
House of Wax.
House of Wax.
Your favorite, Fright Night. You love that movie.
So for anybody that doesn't know me, please don't believe that. I have never disliked a movie. I created a Rotten Tomatoes account just so I could go on and fucking flame Fright Night. I don't like it. Sorry. I know that it does have a lot of fans. I hate it. That's the most that I want to say about it. Don't request it. But there was like a big resurgence of remakes. And so, now it's 2024 and it just kind of feels like there's another resurgence of remakes because we're getting a lot. It seems like the remake trend hits horror really hard. Have you noticed that?
Aggressively.
It's just like they'll remake a horror movie in a second, but like there is no Titanic remake. You know what I mean?
The only thing worse than horror getting the remake is Spider-Man.
Another Spider-Man?
I never thought I'd see it.
Groundbreaking. But let's climb off our little soapbox real quick. In case you guys are wondering what remake we are talking about today. Today we are talking about Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween. So this is the 2007 Rob Zombie version of Halloween. Like every Rob Zombie production, it was written, directed, produced by Rob Zombie. And this is going to be the second movie in our... what we're hoping we don't get a cease and desist for, our Hellbilly Deluxe month.
We want that, though, because if he sends us that means he's listening.
Very true. Very true. So we're covering, if you listened last week, we covered Devil's Rejects. This is our second Rob Zombie in a row, so we're doing a little double feature action. And then we're going to follow it up with just two more movies that really fit the genre, the Hellbilly type genre. So we're excited about those. We're really excited about this month. We did talk about the sequel to this movie already. So it was actually our very first episode.
Yes.
Episode number 1. So if you guys want to hear that one, you can go back and listen, but do please be kind and remember that it was our very first episode. So It does sound, quality-wise, it's a little rough, but we do think that it's a good episode. So our first 2 episodes, when we started the podcast, were 2 Rob Zombie movies. It was a Rob Zombie double feature, so we're kind of recreating that. So we did House of a Thousand Corpses and Halloween 2009. So this time we're doing Devil's Rejects and Halloween 2007. So for this Halloween remake, Rob Zombie developed this film as both a remake, but also a bit of an origin story. So that allowed him to insert a little bit more original content rather than simply refilming just kind of a scene for scene remake, which was smart on his part, I think. That's debatable. But I think that scene for scene remakes can get a little tired if not done perfectly. So he was able to add a little bit more context to certain things. So this is the first movie in the Rob Zombie Halloween series. So it's obviously a remake of the 1978 Halloween, and there's been some changes, but overall the core story is still very much there. A lot of that has to do with when he was tasked with kind of remaking this movie. The production studio was a little bit strict with him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't have a ton of freedom with the movie. He had to stick to the source material. With the second one, they gave him a little bit more free rein to make some changes. That one is a total departure from the original Halloween 2. So, with all that being said, I guess, do you want to just get right into it?
I mean, yeah, let's start it.
All right, so let's get into it. So the movie starts with some on-screen text. We get a quote from Dr. Samuel Loomis, and it states, "The darkest souls are not those which choose to exist within the hell of the abyss, but those which choose to break free from the abyss and move silently among us." We then get the title card, and we cut to the Myers home. Some on-screen text lets us know that this is Haddonfield, Illinois, October 31st. We are not given a year. So that's something that we talked about when we did Halloween 2009. Because for a long time, I was like, this really feels like the 70s. A lot because of their attire. And the fact that it just feels like nobody has cell phones or anything in 2009. But then I think we determined that it was pretty close. We think that it's pretty close to just like current day, right? 2009 was like kind of close to 2009.
2009 was close to 2009.
Right. So this one would be in the 90s. Yeah. So that's just what we're guessing, but Rob Zombie purposefully didn't give it a year. So we cut to a young boy in a clown mask, and we will learn that this is 10-year-old Michael Myers, and he is in his room playing with one of his pet rats. While downstairs, we meet his mom, Deborah Myers, and she's in the kitchen with her boyfriend, Ronnie, and her little baby, Angel, who everyone just calls Boo. And she is making some breakfast, but at the same time, she is aggressively arguing with Ronnie because that's just kind of what they do. She's just saying she has to work that night since she's the only one in the house making any money because Ronnie is jobless and he's also injured.
He's all broke up over that bitch.
Which she can clearly see. So the fight is extremely vulgar, extremely chaotic. Judith, Michael's sister, comes downstairs, scantily clad. The movie would like you to know. And Deborah sends her upstairs to get her brother for breakfast. Ronnie then makes an incredibly inappropriate remark about how nice Judith's butt is. And Deborah is livid and knocks his coffee out of his hand, burning him. So, as an adult, he takes his arm and just swipes across the kitchen table, just knocking everything to the floor, and then tells her to clean it up. It is like 8 a.m. It's early as fuck for this type of behavior.
For everybody to be on 11.
They're downstairs buffooning. It's just a lot. But now upstairs, when Judith is knocking on Michael's door, we see that he's inside and he just killed a rat, y'all. So remember, it's like 7 o'clock in the morning. He's murdered something. They're downstairs arguing. Judith barely has any clothes on. It's just a lot. Everybody is very, very much insufferable at this point. So Michael is cleaning all the blood off of the scalpel that he used to kill his pet rat while Judith is banging on his door. And he's just screaming at the top of his lungs because he doesn't really want to be bothered by her. But they make their way downstairs, though, for breakfast. And as Ronnie is talking about how something is just kind of wrong with Michael, how he lacks discipline, which is not untrue, but I think there's a lot more wrong with Michael than just a lack of discipline. But Ronnie's saying a lot of very vulgar, very inappropriate things. He's saying that Michael is probably like a queer and he says something like he's gonna cut his
dick and balls off and change his name to Michelle.
To Michelle. And so then when Michael comes downstairs, he calls him Michelle, my belle.
He's so weird.
He's a lot to handle.
This is like 4 minutes in.
No, literally. It's 4 minutes in and like 7 o'clock in the morning, their time. It's like total chaos in this home. Babies crying and shit. So when Judith and Michael sit down at the breakfast table, Michael, he sadly tells his mom that his rat died. And you can tell that Deborah is a very caring mother. You can tell that she loves her kids because she takes the time to comfort him. But Ronnie and Judith are just really fucking assholes, both of them.
For no particular reason.
For no reason at all. They're just kind of making fun of the situation, but Michael just kind of ignores them, or at least seems to. But he does warmly greet Boo, his little sister, with a kiss. Now, this whole time, the entire time, Michael has been wearing this clown mask. And so Ronnie tells him to take it off at the breakfast table. And when Michael doesn't, Ronnie forcefully snatches it off of Michael. And Michael just yells at him that he hates him. And Ronnie's like, I fucking hate you too. And Ronnie threatens him. And then Michael heads off to school to go function as a normal fucking member of society after all this fucking bullshit. After he woke up, murdered something, he got called a queer and got made fun of, and all the yelling and screaming. Now he's going to school. So should tell you a lot about Michael's kind of state of mind at the moment.
I just want to say, there are people who go on and on about how awful Trick or Treat motherfucker is. It's so terrible. But I want to let you all know that this movie, a quote is that he is going to purge his snort all over those floppy ass titties. Purge my snort.
That is a part of the conversation that Ronnie and Deborah are having, yes.
Who calls it snort?
Rob Zombie, I think that he just cannot write regular dialogue. I think that is a real task for him. I think his dialogue has to be unhinged, or he just kind of doesn't know what to do.
Because I have never heard somebody say purge my snort.
It's a lot. It's a lot for an opening scene. It's a lot for a kid to have going on in their home.
Ronnie has a cast on his arm. He's telling Michael that when they heal, he's going to break it again on his face. I hate that kind of like stepdad trope. Like, he needs discipline. Like, who are you supposed to listen to? You? Who are you, dude?
Look at you. Look at the shit that you're saying. You don't have a job.
You got on flip-flops.
So Ronnie is not a likable character, just at all.
But he's not alone.
Judith is not really likable either. Her and Ronnie, in Michael's mind, they are antagonists. That'll come back up later. So at school, as Michael is using the bathroom, he is accosted by some bullies who start by making fun of Judith, which Michael's like, yeah, I mean, fair. But then the bully, Wesley, he starts talking about Deborah, Michael's mom, because he has found an ad that he's clipped out of like the back of a magazine. And it's for the strip club where Deborah Myers works. And she's topless in the ad. And he says that he's going to make copies and show everybody. He also says a lot of other vulgar things. Like,
he says, do you think that she'll suck his dick for a quarter and maybe let swallow to come? Let him come on her tits?
come on her tits. Yeah. He also says that his dad told him, which I doubt, but he probably heard it from somewhere. His dad said that for $1, Deborah would rub her boobs in his face. So it's just a lot. So Michael's hearing all this. He's getting really, really upset. And it's when the bully said that he's going to make a copy of this magazine ad and just show everybody. That's when Michael is really just like, fuck you, which offends the bullies. So they try to jump him. They start to. But their principal Chambers, hears the commotion. He comes into the bathroom. He breaks it up. Now, he most likely would have been on Michael's side in this situation, as he was clearly the one that was on the floor getting jumped. But Michael just...
It's an asshole like the rest of his family.
Right, just unhinged behavior. He's just like, fuck you, with his whole chest. And then repeats it as if like, did I fucking stutter? And the principal's like, I'm calling your fucking mom. So of course his mom has to come to the school, because that's like, what the hell were you thinking? What the hell's wrong with you? So Deborah comes into Principal Chambers' office, and this is where we get a good idea of Deborah Meyer's shortcomings as a parent. Because her shortcomings are not that she is abusive. Michael is not abused by his mother. He's not, I would say that he's not neglected by his mother. She's just, I don't want to say she's a single woman, because she does have Ronnie, but she might as well be single.
But she does work hard.
She has to work hard because she is the sole income in the house. And so, you know, and it's strip club hours, so she's working like at night and stuff, so she's not really there a lot. She clearly does really care about her children, but the issue is that she does not hold them accountable. They don't have structure. She refuses to believe that they can do any wrong. She really sees her kids through rose-colored glasses, and they are clearly both filled with flaws. I mean, they have some really inappropriate behavior. Judith is a little bit different. I think her bad behavior is being promiscuous. It's a lot of sexual behavior. And then Michael is like a serial killer in training. So... So I know they're not quite the same, but it's just that Deborah Myers just doesn't acknowledge either of these things in her kids. But it's during this time, and when she's in the principal's office, that we're introduced to Dr. Samuel Loomis, who is a child psychologist. He comes in because when they were searching in Michael's backpack, they found a dead cat, and Deborah just brushes it off. Like, she says, big deal, he found a dead cat. Girl, what?
Deborah.
Let's be fucking for real right now. So then he's like, okay, if that's not enough, which I'm shook that it's not, they pull out a bunch of Polaroids that Michael has taken of other dead animals. They believe that Michael didn't just photograph these animals, but that he killed them himself. So Dr. Loomis tries to explain to her that hurting small animals is an early warning sign of a much bigger issue. And he says that he really needs to evaluate him, because the kind of kid that can do this has a very deranged mind. But the entire time, Deborah is being really combative. She just can't believe that Michael would do something like this. And I don't get where she's coming from, because Michael looks like a freak to me. I don't know.
Well, Michael looks like a freak. And let's just do some math. Okay, so Judith and Boo are 17 years apart. Ronnie is not Boo's daddy, right?
I do not believe so, no.
Okay, so all her children, let's just give her the BOTD. All her children have the same daddy. So he died like a year
Very
ago.
recently, yes.
And you already got another man in the house? And he not paying no bills?
No, I'm not trying to be rude.
I am.
Because to each their own. But I was thinking the same thing. So that is something that we're going to learn. We learn it from Judith not long from now, but their father, Deborah Meyer's husband, he died. So that is when she became a single mom, and then I suppose she started dating Ronnie, who I have a feeling was probably a customer.
Oh, you know he was like Lance in the Players Club.
Exactly. He's giving very much that vibe. And so she met him, they got together. And, part of me is kind of thinking, well, it's common. I hear stories about this all the time where it's like a woman who's a single mom. She will go out and she'll find someone. They may not be the perfect someone. They may not be somebody that she really loves, but she just needs a man in the house to kind of take care of her and the kids, help with income. Men do the same thing. There are a lot of men, when their wives die or they get divorced, you hear it all the time that men get married really, really quickly after because they're like, well, I need help with the kids, that kind of stuff. Except for the fact that Ronnie contributes nothing. So I'm just really confused about why he's here.
Do you think as soon as he moved in, he like broke his hand?
That's what I'm thinking, that he must have at some point contributed something to the household and then got hurt. And that's kind of where it happened. But also to have a man in the house that's sexually attracted to your teenage daughter is bananas.
What is this, Pornhub? Like,
right. I am totally fucking outdone with the fact that he commented on Judith's body and he's still in this fucking house. So I'm not trying to shit on Deborah, but
you're looking real weak right now.
Right. And that's the thing. So we don't get a lot of information on Ronnie, but when they're arguing and she's like, well, I'm the only one that works in the house. He's like, well,
I'm all broken up here, bitch.
And so now he's out of work. Deborah's the only one working. And I'm just like, why are you with him? I'm very confused about that.
Oh, what's up, human sloth?
Right. So outside in the hall, Michael can hear Deborah and Dr. Loomis talking about him. He can hear everything that they're saying. So he decides to run away. So he collects his clown mask from his locker and he is going to hunt down Wesley the bully, who is a shithead until the very end. So Michael follows him into the woods while Wesley's walking home, and he puts his clown mask on, and he catches Wesley by surprise, and he beats him pretty savagely with a huge tree branch. And while Wesley's lying on the ground, bloodied and broken, trying to apologize, begging for his life, Michael takes the magazine clipping of his mom out of Wesley's pocket, and he ultimately ends up killing him by beating him in the head with the tree branch. And then when he's done, he just walks away.
Crazy, because this is like a really big switch in the lore, Mm-hmm. The original kill is not his sister Judith, but just some random dude.
Right. It's totally new. And that's his first on-screen kill. So, at home, Ronnie is making fun of Michael pretty heavily for killing animals, which I don't even know why Deborah would share that with him. But Michael is ignoring him because he's just really excited to be going trick-or-treating that night. Judith is supposed to be taking him while Deborah goes to work. Deborah is like, I honestly shouldn't let you go because of the shit that you pulled today at school. But I'm going to let you, and you better live it up tonight because tomorrow things are changing. I know, famous last words.
Last words. I was saying famous last words.
Right. But because Deborah is really sweet to her kids, she can't really discipline. She softens almost immediately. And she just kind of assures Michael that even though everything's been really tough, tomorrow they're going to start working on making everything better. Just as Deborah is leaving, she tells Judith to take Michael trick-or-treating and to have her boyfriend Steve out by 11 p.m. After Deborah is gone, Judith does not, in fact, take Michael trick-or-treating. She tells him to, essentially fuck off. She's like, aren't you old enough to fucking go alone?
And honestly...
But that's what I was thinking. So she was like, go by your fucking self. And I was like, he's 10. It's Haddonfield. I feel like he can be alone. I don't know. But then additionally, she's like, aren't you too old to be trick-or-treating anyway? And I was like, that's not fair.
I'm going to trick-or-treat right the hell now.
Right. But I was thinking he's definitely old enough to go alone because ultimately he does end up going alone. But I was like, he might have just really wanted somebody to go with him. He's probably really kind of lonely, right?
He's 130%. You know he don't have no friends. He ain't got no girls.
No. His mom is always working.
He had that stupid ass haircut. He killed rats. You know he don't take baths.
His favorite sister is only like 18 months.
Judith's over here making his life hell because she sucks dick.
Yeah, she does. That is a thing that she does. So Judith doesn't take him trick-or-treating because she's really trying to just like go have sex with Steve. The next scene we get is going back and forth between Michael, who is lamenting while sitting on the curb in his clown costume, and Deborah Myers at her strip club job. And this is one of those scenes that Rob Zombie is really famous for doing, where it's like we aren't getting the sound from the movie. It's just like a song that's kind of overlaid over the movie, and it's Love Hurts.
The Nazareth version.
And as the scene comes to a close, we see Michael put his clown mask on and start to head home. Womp womp.
Womp womp for them there.
Well, yes. But while all this is happening, so Judith and her boyfriend are in her room and they're fooling around. This is when Judith reveals that her dad died because Steve made the mistake of calling Ronnie her dad, and she makes it very, very clear that Ronnie is not their father. He is just a stepfather. So after he apologizes, he pulls out a mask and puts it on. And anybody that is familiar with the franchise knows that it's the Michael Myers mask. During all of these shenanigans, Michael has arrived home, and we see him sitting at the kitchen table, and all he got in his bag from trick-or-treating was like fucking candy corn. So he's sitting at his kitchen table alone eating this nasty ass rubber ass candy corn, and I was like, I guess this was the straw that broke the camel's back, because he's like, you know what, fuck this. He's like, I'm eating candy corn alone in my kitchen. I'm killing everybody in this bitch. And he and he does.
And they would have had a Snickers. One Snickers would have saved the day.
One fucking Snickers, a fucking snack-sized Kit Kat could have saved a life this night. But no. He got candy corn. He was like, that's fucking it.
Candy corn, sweet tarts, and motherfucking Raisinets.
Just a bunch of it's a little pile of straight bullshit. And I was like, No wonder he killed everybody. It was the most bullshit Halloween haul I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, I feel like you could have stayed home and eaten better.
You can't make candy corn taste good.
It doesn't even feel real in your mouth.
Right.
And it's what pushed this 10-year-old to annihilate his family. So he gets up, he grabs a roll of duct tape and a big fucking kitchen knife. And this is setting up the second on-screen kill. So Michael goes into the living room where Ronnie is sleeping in a recliner, and he duct tapes him to the chair. So he puts duct tape around his legs, around his upper arms, over his mouth, and on the top of his head. He cannot move at all. And so Michael then lowers his clown mask over his face. And it's important to note that Michael always dons a mask before he kills somebody. So he then walks behind Ronnie and he very casually slits his throat, and Ronnie bleeds to death. That's the second on-screen kill. So now upstairs, Judith and Steve are done having sex, and Steve decides to go downstairs to make himself a sandwich while Judith stays in her bed with headphones on listening to music. Steve doesn't notice Ronnie dead in his armchair and just walks straight into the kitchen. But while sitting at the kitchen table, Michael sneaks up behind him and he slams an aluminum baseball bat into the back of his head. And it causes him to fall on the floor and start seizing. And then Michael just proceeds to beat him with the bat. There's blood everywhere. And that is Michael's third on-screen kill. So once Michael is done, he drops the bat and picks up his kitchen knife and heads upstairs to confront Judith. In Judith's room, he puts on Steve's Michael Myers mask and walks over to Judith, who's lying on her bed, and he starts tickling her leg, which she believes is Steve at first. But when she turns and sees it is Michael, she's pissed and she slaps him a couple of times, asking him, "What the fuck are you doing in my room?"
She's so mean.
She's very mean. Michael ends up plunging the kitchen knife into her stomach. As Judith staggers into the hallway, Michael is right behind her, and he starts slicing and stabbing her until she falls to the ground and eventually dies, making her his fourth on-screen kill.
We didn't get no time with her.
You don't get any time with her, and then the time that you do spend with her, she's really insufferable. I mean, it's really hard to watch her. So he then heads into his baby sister Boo's room, and he puts his knife down and takes off his mask. He tells her Happy Halloween, he kisses her, and he then takes her outside and sits on the porch with her to wait for his mom to get off of work and come home. When Deborah gets home, she pulls up and she sees Michael sitting on the porch with Boo, and she keeps asking him what's going on, what is happening, but he will not say a word. And then it cuts to the police and the EMS arriving, and they are seen wheeling out bodies. Deborah is off to the side being held up by police officers because she is inconsolable at the loss of her daughter.
That's sad.
It is very sad. I thought they did a really good job with this scene. She's screaming and she's crying over her body. There's a news crew that is on the scene as well. And this is when we learn some details about the killings. So we learn that Judith was stabbed 17 times. And Ronnie in addition to having his throat slit, was stabbed numerous times in the face and chest.
In the face.
I know.
I felt so bad for her when she pulled that cover off, Judith.
Yeah.
She was screaming, unconsolable. Good acting.
Sherry did a good job with this as Deborah Myers in this one.
Let's be clear.
Yes. So we then get this really cool shot where everything in the whole scene is entirely frozen. So it's all the chaos, the EMTs, the police officers, all that is frozen. And then the camera pans to the police car where Michael is sitting in the back. And he just slowly turns and looks into the camera, just kind of totally devoid of emotion. The scene then cuts to black, and we get some on-screen text that reads, Smith's Grove, 11 months later. We learned from a news report that 10-year-old Michael was found guilty of first-degree murder, and he ends up getting transferred to Smith's Grove. It's a psychiatric facility for criminals. Not just children, because Michael is going to stay there well into adulthood. Every time we learn anything about Michael when he's somewhere other than terrorizing the streets of Haddonfield, in every single movie, he's always at Smith's Grove. Dr. Loomis, the child psychiatrist, is going to oversee his care there, which he does for a long time. So we then cut to Michael and Dr. Loomis, and they're meeting together. Dr. Loomis records their sessions, and Michael says that he remembers nothing about Halloween night. And Dr. Loomis kind of asks him, like, do you remember stabbing people? Like something like that. And Michael's like, I didn't do that. And I was like, do you think he doesn't remember doing that? Or do you think he's lying?
I don't think that Rob Zombie knows enough about mental illness or dissociated identity disorder to make these storylines. I think he should have just had Michael not talking.
Okay, heard.
Because I'm going to tell you why. Just put a pin there. Keep going, but I'm going to tell you why.
I'm very curious to see what you think, because I was thinking about this a lot when I was watching the movie for a few reasons. So later, Deborah comes to visit Michael, and he keeps asking her,
how is everybody?
Right, okay, this is it, he's like, he wants to go home first. He wants
to go home,
and she is like, can't go home today. He's like, well, what about tomorrow? And she's like, well, I have to talk to your doctors about that, because she's trying to be a mom who's sweet to him. I guess everybody is operating under the assumption that Michael just like doesn't remember what he did. So I guess they're trying to not break it to him.
But Michael sits in the courtroom.
And I'm sure that there were crime scene photos.
He says to Dr. Loomis, I didn't do that. Okay, so that's you acknowledging that, oh, well, they're dead. I didn't do that. But now you're asking her, how is everybody? So you playing the game.
I don't know what Rob Zombie was trying to achieve here, because you're right. In a way, Rob Zombie is almost painting himself into a bit of a corner. Right, because you have him talking way too much. Because Michael never talks. So you are kind of inventing lore that doesn't exist, because we don't have a talking Michael. After, in other movies, after he's 6 years old, he never speaks again.
He doesn't even speak when he's 6.
Right, yeah. They get there and they're like, Michael, what the hell happened? Crickets. We don't know. We have no fucking idea. So now you're adding a lot to the canon. And I'm such a Rob Zombie fan. I think he's so creative. he loves movies. I think he's well versed in movies. I think he's well versed in the horror genre. I think he probably knows all these movies backwards and forwards, you know what I mean? But I just feel like I don't know if he gave that much care to really, really, really thinking about every single word that came out of young Michael's mouth. Because I'm kind of left wondering, is Michael just a total manipulative piece of shit kid? Which I get that vibe. Or is there some possibility that Michael really doesn't remember that he did it?
I feel like Michael is a disturbed young man, but also at the same time is a kid who grew up with a mom who probably has spoiled him a little
Agreed.
bit. So he's playing into that.
And I agree with you, in which case he's being really cruel.
To his mother.
Right. To ask her, is everybody okay at home? It's pretty diabolical.
Because even if she was an asshole, Judith was her daughter.
Right. And she was an asshole to you.
You.
But your mother loved her.
And at the same time, no more did you take Judith from her. Now you've made you somebody that she has to kind of figure out a way to love.
Right. So she chokes back tears in this moment and she tells him, yeah, everybody's okay. She's better than me. I don't know how I would react in a situation like this because
the house is empty.
It's just her and Boo. She has no one to talk to. She has no one to care for besides the baby. And then you.
I'm sure Steve's parents are not very nice to her.
I'm sure. I don't think the town is nice to her. And then, you know what I was thinking? Michael has that incident that happens at school and he beats that kid to death. And then it's Halloween and then he kills his whole family and he goes to jail that night. So we don't have time to really get a sense of the aftermath, but they have to know he beat that kid Wesley to death, right?
Right.
Your kid murdered a lot of people. I have to imagine that Deborah is absolutely hated in the community.
And you're a stripper.
She can't still be working there, right?
Right.
I feel like people don't want to see her.
You got the nerve to be like, how is everybody?
Right. And I think that's so cruel.
And I don't think that the lore of the character Michael from the original series is cruel in the sense of like mind games.
Mm-hmm.
He's crafty in the sense of like, I kill people. How can I set up a trap for you?
Right. He at no point during the rest of the franchise are they like Michael is manipulative.
Right.
And he's being really manipulative in this moment.
A huge part is disturbed, but spoiled and like, you know, what can I say to get out of this situation?
Agreed.
Because he's still a child.
Right. And I think that maybe he thinks that if he's like, okay, tell them I don't remember that I did it. I have no recollection of it. I'm really sweet and everything's really nice. And then maybe I'll be able to get out of here. Which I don't know if he understands. He was convicted of first-degree murder. I don't think that he was ever going to go home. So we cut to the nighttime, and there is a very sweet Smiths Grove employee. His name is Ishmael, but we're going to call him Danny Trejo.
Because, come on now.
Because, I mean, it's Danny fucking Trejo. So he's cleaning up, and he takes the time to try to comfort Michael, because at the end of the day, Michael is only a child. He is a 10-year-old in a maximum security psychiatric facility. And he's sad. He's sad about being locked up. So Danny Trejo tells him to not let the walls get him down, and he tells him to just live inside his head because there are no walls there. Now, Michael never talks to him, but he kind of looks like he appreciates what Danny Trejo is saying, or at least Danny Trejo interprets it that way. So at Michael's next session with Dr. Loomis, Michael reveals that he's made a new mask. That's his thing right now. He makes masks. It's all black. He explains that he made the mask because no one sees him. He doesn't want people to see him. When his mom comes to visit another day, he shows her yet another mask he's made, and he says that he wants to hide his face. Specifically, he wants to hide his ugliness. And Deborah, being just a real mom, she takes it off of him, and she tells him that he's not ugly and to just not speak that way ever again. And he accepts that right now, her ripping this mask off of him. So they tell each other how much they miss each other. But then the next time we see Michael, so a bit of time has changed because it's Christmas time, it's snowing, and Michael's really going through it. He is now in a session with Dr. Loomis, and he's wearing yet another mask, and he's just screaming that he hates Dr. Loomis. He really just wants to go home. He does not want to be in Smith Groves anymore. And he gets so frustrated that he ends up taking his mask off, and he cries and is super vulnerable with Dr. Loomis. And Dr. Loomis, you know, to his credit, is very sweet to him, because I know that this Dr. Loomis in the next movie, he's not our favorite character.
Right.
But Dr. Loomis explains to him that he cannot go home because he's done some really terrible things. But he tries to console him to make him feel better about his situation right now.
That you created.
Right. So the next time we see Michael, it looks like winter is over and it's now spring. And he's walking the grounds with his mom, but he's quickly becoming really withdrawn. He's becoming pretty despondent. He's no longer pleasant even with his mom. And when she takes off his mask, as she'd done previously, this time he just tells her to just please put his mask back on. No matter what she says, he's just like, please put the mask back on. So at this point, he's wearing the mask all the time. He never takes it off. So then at another visitation with his mom, he is again wearing the mask, and he's looking worse than ever. So his hair is a mess, even more of a mess. He is appearing really sullen. He's stopped eating, apparently. There is no talking at this point. And so to make him feel better, Deborah gives Michael a picture of him and baby Boo. And he looks at it, but he doesn't make any move to take it. So she just kind of leaves it on the table. And then she and Dr. Loomis walk out while he calls in a nurse to sit with Michael. So in the hallway, Dr. Loomis is telling Deborah that Michael has been silent at this point for about 2 weeks. And he is considering electroshock therapy now. Meanwhile, as this nurse is sitting with Michael, she turns her back to him to read a newspaper, which, not a good idea. This is an insane asylum for the criminally insane. So I was like, I don't know if it's improper training. Additionally, Michael is being given actual cutlery. I don't know why. In every iteration of this story, Michael always has some metal fucking cutlery. He takes the fork and he stabs this nurse just all up in her throat, making her the 5th on-screen kill. It's a scene where the sound of the movie is cut out. There's a lot of action happening. People are rushing in to try to save this nurse. People are restraining Michael. Dr. Loomis and Deborah are rushing in to see what's going on. But all that we can hear is this blaring alarm. And the nurse is lying on the floor. She's bleeding to death pretty quickly. When Deborah rushes to Michael and she tries to take the mask off, Michael loses it. And he's really, I guess, not even the same kid at this point. He's just kind of given in to this darkness. He's not even trying. So Deborah is actually pretty scared of him at this point. And she's distraught. And Dr. Loomis is also scared. And he's just like kind of staring at the scene in shock. And it's all just really, really chaotic. Once that is over, we cut to Deborah Myers, who is at this point extremely depressed. She's at her house. She's crying on the sofa. I'm sure unable to comprehend how her child has de-evolved so quickly. But she's watching some old home movies of her and Michael, and she's pregnant with Boo, and everything seems really happy. Judith is not in these movies. But Deborah is extremely depressed watching these movies. And so she takes a gun, and we don't see it happen. The camera just kind of settles on the home movies that are rolling. But she commits suicide, so she shoots herself in the head, leaving a scared and screaming Boo alone in the room. The screen fades to black, and then we get some on-screen text that reads 15 years later.
That sucks.
Yeah, no, it's all very sad.
And if only she didn't come back in the sequel, it would be a very sad character. But alas...
I just feel like the character could have been used differently. She could have come back. She could have been like, you know, a figure of his imagination, a ghost, whatever. But I just wish that he'd done it just differently.
Because she's so good, actually, in the first one.
She definitely fits in this chaotic scene. She obviously loves her kid, but she's a single mom. She's trying, stripper. It worked. And I did think that she did a really good job as Deborah Myers. I just hated her as Deborah Myers' ghost.
I just really, really didn't like her return. But, like, she's probably, like, one of the stronger parts of this movie.
Definitely.
And she was probably the best part of this prequel shit.
Definitely. She's the only one of the characters from that entire time that is actually, I don't want to say memorable, because it's like, yeah, I remember Ronnie, I remember Judith, but not fondly. You know, Deborah's the only one that I'm like, she was pleasant, yeah.
And she actually felt like a realized person. You get who she is.
Right.
You feel for her, losing her child to her child, then losing that child, you know, another way, and then like feeling so despondent, you know. And
not to mention, she lost her husband very
abruptly.
Right.
I wish that, I don't know if it's a fun fact that you recorded, but he wanted to do 2 movies. He wanted to do a prequel movie and then another like regular Halloween, and they didn't want to do that. But right. I feel like if they would be able to do that, we would have got more of her, which would have been good.
Yeah. I didn't put it in my fun facts, but yes, he wanted to make 2 movies, a prequel just kind of solely around Michael, and the studio was like, no. And that's not surprising to me, because the studio, it seems to favor things that are pretty formulaic, especially when it comes to remakes of this caliber. So with Halloween, they're like, let's not rock the boat. We're just trying to get money, right? Like, we're trying to make this, like, let's be real. We're trying to make this as successful as possible. Let's give people the story that, more or less, that they remember. People just want to watch the same shit again. It's why people watch reruns, you know, of The Sopranos all the time. They have the 25th anniversary, like, box sets. You know, it's just people want to see these comfort type movies. I have it as a fun fact. Sherry Moon Zombie was a great choice for Deborah Myers. If you were going this route with Michael's character, Do you know, if he wasn't able to do any prequel stuff, do you know what character he wanted Sherry Moon Zombie to play?
I want to say something normal, like, oh, he wanted her to probably play someone like Mrs. Strode, or maybe he wrote a new character, maybe giving Laurie's teacher a little more to do. But I feel like you about to tell me some bullshit, like he would have had old ass playing Annie or something.
He wanted her to play Linda. He wanted her to play Linda.
Old ass.
Dante, I had to read it a couple of times because I was like, wait. Okay, wait. Linda, right? Linda is the friend, a child, a high school student. I was like, Rob, when is enough enough? When?
She would look so foolish.
That would have been crazy. Absolutely unhinged.
Oh my God, that would look so fucking crazy.
But especially because Laurie, as is the lore, is very prudish. You know, this Laurie, like the actress that's playing Laurie in this movie, was in fact a teenager at the time. Danielle Harris, we know, wasn't, who is playing Annie. And I'm not sure how old actual Linda is, but I do know that she is not a teenager. But she's not fucking middle-aged. Had Sherry Moon Zombie been Linda, I would have been like, I would have had to push my chair back from the table and be like, all right, I'm going to head out. Because what the fuck are you talking about right now? Don't fucking play with me. Give her an adult's character. So thank goodness he was able to use her as Deborah Myers, because I do think that she really did a good job playing Deborah Myers. I think that she fits. With that being said, from everything I know about her, Sherry Moon Zombie is a very sweet woman.
I really like. Do you follow them?
I do. I follow both of them, and they love animals, and I love that.
Love animals. They're plant-based.
Mm-hmm. So now it's 15 years later, and back at Smith's Grove, we see a now older Danny Trejo, and he's training a new employee, and they are going to take Michael to his session with Dr. Loomis. So when they transfer patients, probably, but especially Michael, they have to use a little bit of precaution, because as we'll see, when they go to Michael's room, they open the door. Michael is big as fuck. Michael is fucking huge. Like, I cannot emphasize how fucking big this dude has gotten, because it's like the last time we saw him, he was a kid. He's big as hell. He's also dirty. I know he was dirty before, but that the word dirty doesn't do it justice. He's crusty as fuck, scraggly, hair is long, hasn't been brushed since
Judith's death.
So they open the door, and his room is also, wall to wall covered in masks that he's made. I guess this is like something that's keeping him sane, is to just create these masks. He's actually making one when they walk in. So he's like paper macheing a new mask. He's also wearing a mask, of course. So the new guard that Danny Trejo is training, and this is like something, I get so weary sometimes in Rob Zombie movies, because you can always count on this. The new guard is very, very unnecessarily a piece of shit. And I was like, I don't know if people really act like this. If just like off the jump, people are assholes.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's just kind of too much, because the guard walks in and Michael hasn't done anything. And so he's just automatically calling him a lot of names. I have to assume that Rob put this character in here as a juxtaposition to Danny Trejo, because Danny Trejo obviously defends Michael against this crazy idiot guard. Because Danny Trejo is very kind to Michael. He always has been. And he even notes that he's been taking care of this kid since he got here. It's been almost 20 years. And so he has a bond with Michael that he feels. And, Rob is really taking a moment like this to really highlight that. but they bring him to a session with Dr. Loomis, and this is a turning point for Michael. And I kind of appreciated that he put this in the movie because it's mentioned in the first movie, not as in like, oh, I sat down with him and I had this conversation, but Dr. Loomis has said I just couldn't be his doctor anymore because there really wasn't any more that I could do for him. We sit down right now and we are actually getting this conversation between Dr. Loomis. So this is a big turning point. So Dr. Loomis is telling him that he can't be his doctor anymore. After all, Michael hasn't spoken a single word in 15 years. So there really isn't much more that Dr. Loomis can do with him, right? Because this is supposed to be fucking talk therapy. And it's also affecting Dr. Loomis on a personal level. I think he's mentions like it's one of the longest relationships that he's ever had. And he's like, in a way, you're like my best friend. Because I guess he just fucking uses Michael as a fucking soundboard at this point. And so that is kind of it. He's like, this is the last time I'm ever going to see you. And Michael doesn't react in this moment. But I think that it did affect Michael. It's somebody abandoning him.
It's another man abandoning him.
Yeah. He did have a bond with Dr. Loomis, no matter how we feel about him as the movie goes on, or, you know, especially in the sequel to this movie, or just Dr. Loomis, period. I know that he gets treated a lot of different ways in the franchise. Sometimes we like him, sometimes we really don't, but he is a consistent character. I thought that they did a good job in this movie, in the prequel section, showing when he's comforting him, when he cares for him. I think at a point in time, he does really care for Michael. And I think that he still does later. I think he does feel something for Michael. And I appreciated that. That's one of the little things that Rob did. You know, people feel differently, John Carpenter specifically, feel differently about Rob Zombie flushing out Michael's character, but I did appreciate him flushing out Dr. Loomis's character a little bit, and Deborah Myers.
Dr. Loomis is a highlight. He's not the best part of the prequel part. I think Deborah is still the best part of it, but he's really good.
Yeah. So after this conversation, he goes back to his cell. He is upset at this. It clearly affects him because this breaking up with Dr. Loomis feels like the catalyst for the events that happen moving forward. And it makes sense to me because Michael has nothing left from his childhood, right?
Right.
Except the only thing that he knows is that, okay, what's left? Boo. It's the literal only thing. Deborah is gone. Judith is gone. Ronnie's gone. Dr. Loomis is now gone. What do I have? What is the only thing connecting me to a better time?
Danny Trejo.
Wait, stop. Because Danny Trejo is like, well, you have me, Mikey. Danny Trejo.
Hop on, who this woman?
Michael's like, I'm sorry, I don't know her. So we'll get there. So Michael's sent back to Smith Grove, and so then we get it's essentially the whole cast of the Devil's Rejects are preparing to move Michael.
Wait, what version did you watch? I watched the Prime one.
I didn't watch it on Prime. I watched it on Tubi, and it's the version that it doesn't include the rape.
Oh, well, I didn't watch it on Tubi. I watched it on Prime.
It includes the rape?
That's why I was like, what are you talking about? That scene's not in there. Do you watch the theatrical version?
Mm-hmm. But you watched the one that has the rape in it, right?
Right.
I didn't. I do not like that. Okay, so snafu. So we watched two different versions of this movie. So depending on what version you watch. So I watched the theatrical version, which is on Tubi. You watched, I guess, what is it? The director's cut?
Yeah, director's cut.
The director's cut, which is on Prime. There's slight differences between the two. Right. So there's certain things that Rob Zombie couldn't put, and it's the same with all of his movies. He apparently has a lot of trouble getting his movies past the MPAA. Obviously, some stuff can't be in the theatrical version. One thing that is not included, and I'm happy that it's not, I hate that it is included in the director's cut at all, is ridiculously, absurdly, doesn't make fucking sense at all. There's a scene, a rape scene between it's two guards. They bring in another patient, another Smith's Grove patient, a woman, into Michael's room, and they rape her there in front of Michael, which makes zero sense.
Why did they bring her out of her room?
What was the reason?
I guess he really wanted to sell that this guy's a bad guy.
So yeah, so the version that I watched did not have the sexual assault in it. I don't like the sexual assault in it, so I don't know if I subconsciously did it this time, but in the past I've consciously steered away. I saw the director's cut when it first came out, and then I try not to watch it again. So in my version, we just cut to the cast of the Devil's Rejects, and they're preparing to transfer Michael to another facility.
He said reunion, bitch.
They were all just sitting around. They just finished wrapping the Devil's Rejects. He's like, y'all want to make another movie? And they're like, sure, why the fuck not? Let's do a quick outfit change and jump into this scene. So the cast is sitting there. They're cosplaying officers this time. So they are loaded. They have their guns. They have their weapons and stuff. They have their bulletproof vests. And so they are doing a late night transfer, which is kind of how this always goes. So they're taking Michael, and it has to be 4 of them because remember, Michael is a big fucking guy and a murderer. So they get the call. They're like, all right, let's go pick him up. Everybody's like, ooh, Michael Myers.
Trick or treat.
Exactly. So he's walking, and I hated this part. I thought this was so silly. So in prisons, if anybody's ever been in a prison before, there's always fail-safes to make sure that inmates can't escape. In every other iteration of a Halloween movie, the escape always happens outside of the prison. He's on the bus, right?
Right.
Which makes sense that would be the time that he would wait, because realistically, competent people in a prison should be able to keep this fucking dude locked in here. There's bars everywhere. In this instance, they're walking him, and they get to a section, which is very typical of a prison, where there's a 2-door system. So he gets to one door. 3 officers walk him into this door. They have to lock that door before they can open the next door to lead him out to the next hallway. There is an officer, Mother Firefly, with her shotgun. She is outside of that second door. The 3 guards are in there with him. They're preparing to open the door when Michael, because he's fucking huge, they have these toothpick-ass chains on him. He's able to break the chains on his arms. I mean, essentially, he just kills all of them. So he beats one to death with his chains. He bashes one's head in against the wall, kills him like that. Another one. And this is the part that frustrates me, because it's all happening very quickly to give you the appearance that this is
chaos.
Yeah, it's chaotic, but also that this is like something that somebody would actually do. Mother Firefly guard, who's on the other side of this door, the door that is supposed to be controlling these inmates, because if you're in a prison, it's the doors and the bars. Those are the only things that are fucking keeping these people in check. She opens the door. She opens the fucking door. Had she not opened this door, he would have been trapped in this room, and you could have called for backup. She doesn't do that. She is alone. She has a shotgun, but she tells him to open the door. They unlock the door. It opens. She tries to use the shotgun on Michael, but he holds up another guard's body as a shield. So that guard takes the shotgun blast. And then Michael, who is fucking... He must be doing calisthenics in his fucking cell at night, because he's quick as fuck. Like a fucking lynx. He drops that body, and then he just swoops over to her. She doesn't have time to get off another shot. He just like rips her throat out. He likes to rip throats out. So that was like his 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th kills of the movie. It happens very, very quickly. He then takes Mother Firefly's body and he drags it all the way to the next doors because now he has all of her badges and stuff. Meanwhile, Danny Trejo is just clocking in for a shift. It's an overnight shift. Because I don't know if you guys have ever worked overnight. Literally on an overnight shift, nothing could happen.
Or everything.
Or everything can happen.
We both done hospitality overnight.
Overnight, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, overnight, it's wild. And so he's clocking in, hoping this is going to be one of those nothing happens nights. When he gets there, there's a phone that's ringing off the hook, and the shift nurse, Gloria, that's supposed to be there, is nowhere to be found. It has an eerie feeling anyway. I know that I would be creeped out if I was clocking into work like this, but he proceeds to clock in. That's when the camera pans and we see Nurse Gloria. She's actually sitting on the floor behind the desk so he can't see her, and she's bleeding out. He's like ripped her throat out as well. I called it an on-screen kill. It's like a partial on-screen kill since we do kind of see her sitting there dying. So it's like the 10th kill. So Danny Trejo then walks in and he finds 2 more Smiths Grove security guards dead on the floor. They were killed off screen, but it looks extremely violent. There's blood everywhere. Danny Trejo runs to these, obviously dead. There's too much blood for these men to not be dead. He runs up to them to check on them instead of running out the front door. It's insulting. Because that's when Michael walks up behind him. So when Danny sees him, he is clearly scared because Michael's big as fuck, and Michael clearly did this, right? These guards have been demolished. He tries to keep him calm, and he's like, Mikey, that's his little term of endearment for him. He takes one of the security guards' handcuffs, and he's like, let me just take you back to your room. It's all going to be okay. And Michael does present his wrist to him for Danny Trejo to cuff him. So Danny Trejo's probably like, okay, whew. He probably stopped shitting himself. He's like, okay, it's going to be okay. Danny Trejo gets close enough. And then Michael grabs him and starts ragdolling him. Slamming him. He has him every which way but loose. And so y'all, Danny Trejo just keeps saying, I was good to you, Mikey.
You can be as nice to like a rattlesnake as you want to be. But at the end of the day, it's a rattlesnake. So when it bites you, it's just who he is.
And it's like, well, you can't really be that surprised. Yes, Michael Myers is, Dr. Loomis is not wrong in that I don't know if there was anything that could have redeemed Michael when he was younger, if he could have been saved in some way, if more guidance, if his dad hadn't died, if his mom hadn't been a stripper, if he hadn't been bullied, if Judith was better. I don't know if anything could have changed Michael, but there was a certain point, and Danny Trejo, I regret to inform you, it was 15 years ago, where Michael lost that humanity.
Right.
And so you saying this is not moving him in any way. I don't think anything you've done has. So he then, after slamming him around, he keeps holding his head underwater and bringing him up, putting him under, partially drowning him. He's really torturing him. So now that Danny Trejo is in pretty bad shape, he, is not a threat. He drops him to the floor. Michael's like, I'm not done. So just hold that thought. He goes to the wall and he takes a TV off the wall, a big box TV, and he slams it down onto Danny Trejo's head killing him.
Well, did he really die? Because, you can survive getting the TV smashed on your head.
That's what they say. But yes, Danny Trejo dies. And I have a little bit of a fun fact about that. So you don't actually see the TV hit Danny Trejo's head. You just kind of hear it and the screen cuts to black. They did that not to give you any kind of reason to think that he didn't kill Danny Trejo, because he 100% did. But it's because Tyler Mane, the actor that's playing Michael, when he first took the TV off the wall, it slipped out of his hand and he dropped it. So the TV was already, it broke. So then they just had to cut the screen. Then you had to use your imagination, because I guess they didn't have the budget for another TV.
But Sherry Moon don't come cheap. Sherry Moon said, look, you're going to pay me.
Absolutely. So I had this in the fun facts, but I'll just say it right now. Danny Trejo's character's death was not in the original movie. This scene was actually shot months later at a completely different hospital, because Rob Zombie, who was editing, he thought that they needed some resolution to that character, because Danny Trejo did have a good bit of interactions with Michael. And he said, quote, when you're shooting, he seems like such a minor character, but when editing, he seemed a lot more important. So I have to kill him. So they shot the scene, and his scene was actually cut from the movie after studio heads complained about it, but Zombie lobbied to keep it in there. And he said that it is extremely important to have the scene in there. And I guess people, it's sad because you don't want to see him die, because you're like, God, he was so nice to Michael. But Rob Zombie was like, that's the fucking point. He is a brutal, uncompassionate character, and the audience needs to see that, needs to truly see it, because you might feel sorry for Michael up until this point, but you should have no reason to feel sorry for him anymore. He's a ruthless killer. Later that same night, Dr. Loomis is awoken by a phone call from a Dr. Copelson at Smith's Grove, and he's letting him know that Michael has escaped and left a bloodbath in his wake.
Hold on now. He's like, how did I get caught when I quit?
And I guess they were like, well, we don't know what to do. Shit. We don't know shit about this dude. And they do nothing, and he's like, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. Because Dr. Loomis, awoken out of a good sleep, a sleep free of Michael Myers, now has to take the reins and capture this guy?
Just the goddamn gall of these people.
Yeah. But we cut to a truck stop where we meet Joe Grizzly. Bitch. So Joe Grizzly is, of course, played by Ken Foree, who is Charlie in Devil's Rejects. He is on 10. He is really giving the Ken Foree special here. So Joe Grizzly, who is on the screen for maybe 4 minutes, is a real standout character. And that is because Ken Foree, just like Sid Haig, just like Clarence Williams III, they really subscribe to the idea that there's no small parts, only small actors, because they give it 115% every fucking time. So Joe Grizzly is a big fucking dude. He's big in stature.
Yeah.
He's a truck driver. He's pulling his truck in at the truck stop to get it washed, and he's going to do a big old poop, in a truck stop bathroom, as he looks at a porn magazine, because this is a Rob Zombie movie. So he's sitting on the toilet, and Michael sees this guy, and Michael's like, I need a new fit. So he follows Joe Grizzly into the bathroom, and y'all, Joe Grizzly's sitting there, pooping, looking at his porn, and then all of a sudden, Michael's nasty ass, crusty ass, dirty ass, funky ass feet appears under the door. They're caked in shit. And he's wearing these damn Smith's Grove house shoes. That should have been Joe Grizzly's first tip-off that something's very fucking wrong with this dude. And then Michael's so big that he's kind of looking into the stall anyway, right? Because he's really fucking tall. So his feet are down there. He's hulking in front of this stall. He's knocking on the door. Joe Grizzly has some very animated pooping dialogue. And he's like, get the fuck out of here. But Michael is not leaving. He just stands there. He knocks harder. This is when a confrontation ensues. So Joe Grizzly stands up and he pulls out his knife that he keeps on him and he opens the door. Now, Michael is looking crazy as hell because he's crusty. He's wearing a damn robe and some house shoes and this fucking homemade orange marker colored mask.
Looking crazy.
Extra fucking crazy. It's so laughably crazy. But Joe Grizzly stands his ground, and he's a big fucking dude.
He's 6'5", and I think Tyler May is 6'7".
Yes, so it's like Michael's just a little bit taller than him, but they are stature-wise like matching each other. Because Ken Free's like pretty big in this movie too. So that's when Michael attacks him, and he is able to hold his own for a minute, whereas most like lesser men would have been crushed under Michael. They're destroying this bathroom. I know I would have never opened the door. But at the same time, it wouldn't have fucking mattered if you opened it or not. He's like, I need that fucking mechanic suit. So Michael's big and he has like crazy person strength, right? So he is able to overpower Joe Grizzly. Joe Grizzly does have this knife. He has a fucking death grip on it too, because it takes Michael a long time of beating Joe Grizzly's hand against the bathroom stall. I mean, they're crumbling this bathroom for Joe Grizzly to drop this knife and for Michael to pick it up. So once Michael picks it up, Joe Grizzly does punch him, and I know that shit hurt. But Michael is able to stab him in the stomach, and he steals Joe Grizzly's mechanic's suit, that jumpsuit, and his boots.
Them dirty ass feet with no socks.
Squeezed his nasty, crusty ass fucking toes into these boots raw. But yeah, so Joe Grizzly is Michael's 12th on-screen kill. So now it's a new day, and we get some on-screen text that reads, Haddonfield, Illinois, October 31st. So this is where we meet the Strodes for the first time. So it's Mason and Cynthia Strode, and they have their daughter Lori. And this scene, it's very similar while also being a complete juxtaposition to Michael's, how his morning started. Because remember in that one, Deborah Myers was like cooking eggs and she's trying to get the family ready for school and stuff. In this one, Cynthia Strode is also cooking breakfast. She's making some eggs, but everything is just very calm. It's all very wholesome and loving. There's just no chaos. And Lori just seems like a really happy child. I mean, complete opposite of Michael's household. So Mason Strode sends Lori on an errand before school. He wants her to slide some papers into the mail slot at the abandoned Myers house, which has been abandoned since Deborah died. And as she's walking, a little kid runs up to her. So this kid is Tommy Doyle, and it's the kid that she babysits regularly. And they clearly have a very good relationship. Lori seems very sweet. Tommy is telling her about a new monster that he saw on TV because Tommy really believes in monsters and boogeymen and things like that, which will keep coming up throughout the movie. But they're just kind of laughing and having a good time. And while that's happening, we cut to Michael's POV, and he has broken into the Myers home. He just walks straight to his house. He heads to an old floorboard where 15 years earlier, after the massacre at his house, he'd hidden his Michael Myers mask, as well as the butcher knife that he'd used to murder Ronnie and sister. So he dons the mask, and now his outfit is complete. So this is Michael Myers all suited up. So outside, he can actually hear Lori and Tommy approaching. And as they're talking, he watches them through a window that's above the front door. and Lori drops papers into the mail slot, and she's joking with Tommy that something's got her and stuff, and he is very afraid of the house because he's telling Lori that the devil lives there, and Lori is just kind of laughing it off, not knowing that Michael is inside watching her. And he must have recognized her immediately.
Did he? Or was it just like by chance he got to the house and she was the one who was there? She walked up.
And you think that like she's just a random girl to him?
No. I'm thinking that he is like, oh, I need to go back home because Boo is going to be home. Oh, there goes Boo. Because it's just a wherever girl. If Linda walked up, he'd been like, that's Boo. Boo's at the house.
I don't feel like that at all.
Okay.
I think that he knew that it was Boo.
You think he could recognize a baby?
Because she looked like him. She looks like him. She looks like Judith. She looks like Deborah. It's his sister.
Oh. Now, why I'm making like I don't have kinfolk, y'all?
I know. Like, you're acting like you can't look at Don and be like, I'm related to this person. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know.
Y'all look a lot alike. You probably don't feel it, but I think somebody else looking would be like, yes, they're siblings. Especially Don and Dondria.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So if Don was like walking somewhere and he saw Dondria, he'd be like,
Maury.
So I think he recognizes her. Yeah. So we get a shot of them and she's at school, and this is where we meet Lori's friends, Linda and Annie Brackett, who is the sheriff's daughter. So Annie is supposed to be babysitting this little girl, Lindsay Wallace, that night, but she asked Lori if she can just kind of drop Lindsay off with Lori, and if Lori could just watch her, because she is trying to sneak away to hook up with her boyfriend, Paul. Now, Lori is extremely hesitant because she hates lying, and she's really kind of nervous that they're going to get found out, get in trouble, but she eventually agrees, and they have the little exchange of I love yous, and it's all very heartwarming. She clearly has a really good relationship with both of her friends. But while they're laughing and talking about the plan, Lori is looking out of the window there in the library, and she sees Michael standing there for a while, just watching her like a fucking hawk. And she looks away and she looks back and he's gone. Creepy. Because Michael also looks really creepy. I get it that it's Halloween Day, but he is a grown-ass man wearing kind of like a dry-rotted 15-year-old mask it's like 10 a.m. So when we cut back to Smith's Grove, Dr. Loomis is there. He's showed up. And he is pissed because he doesn't think that they've done enough to warn people. He is absolutely certain that Michael is going back to Haddonfield. I mean, they were very close for a long time. So Dr. Loomis is very, very confident in this assumption. So confident that he feels like he is going to take it upon himself to now drive to Haddonfield to warn them. So cutting back to the girls, as Linda, Lori, and Annie are walking home later that day, they run into Michael again, watching them. And Lori is creeped out. She's concerned, as she fucking should be. Linda and Annie, though, just kind of laugh it off. They always laugh it off. In every iteration of these characters, they always dismiss this guy that is just like really creepily standing there and watching them. But after Annie yells at him that her father is the sheriff, he walks away. And so they're just kind of like, oh, well, problem solved. So checking back in with Dr. Loomis, another scene that's always fucking in these movies. Poor gal can't rest in peace. Dr. Loomis heads to the cemetery, and this is the obligatory scene at Judith's grave. And Captain Spaulding is walking him over. and they notice as they're approaching, one of the tombstones is missing. And someone has erected on it this cross made of sticks, as well as a dead coyote hanging from it. And to Dr. Loomis, this is all that he needs to see. This confirms to him that Michael is, in fact, here in Haddonfield. So he runs off to go warn everybody. So now we're cutting to night, and we are checking in with the girls. So Linda is meeting with her boyfriend, Bob, and it turns out that they use the old Myers house to hook up. And that's exactly what they're doing this night. So they're going in, and they fail to notice that Michael is literally standing above them, like on the balcony, looking down at them. But they go inside, and so now Linda and Bob, they're having sex. When they're finished, Linda sends Bob to fetch another beer, which is crazy. The beers are in an ice chest outside in the van, and I was like, why the fuck didn't you just bring the chest in the fucking house? But it's so they can separate from each other. So as Bob is walking out, he totally misses Michael lurking in the shadows watching him. And when he comes back in, he's wearing a sheet with his glasses over it, which is very similar to the first. So it's gonna be a joke to scare Linda. But before he can make it back to her, Michael grabs him and lifts him off the ground, and he stabs him straight through the chest with his butcher knife, which leaves Bob stuck in the wall, hanging there. Now, Michael puts on the sheet and Bob's glasses. And so now he's going to go to Linda, and he even brings her the beer, which is just, I don't know, something about that is just so funny to me.
You just mean like an asshole right now.
Right. So she's sitting there, and we do get a boob shot, which is we always get a Linda boob shot. But he holds it out, and he won't bring it to her. Asshole move. He makes her stand up to get it, and she's completely naked, and she comes over, she grabs the beer. He does hand it to her. He doesn't kill her right away. He lets her take this beer. And then I was like kind of laughing because she's like, what the hell did you do to this beer? I was like, I don't know if the shit is warm or he shook it up. I was like, he did some asshole shit to the beer. And so she's opening this shaken up fucking beer. And it's when she turns her back to him that he grabs her from behind and he just like strangles her. This kill is very different from the first movie because in the first movie, the original, she dies on the phone with Lori. So he walks up and she's on a corded phone. Mm-hmm. And so he wraps the cord around her neck and he chokes her. And Lori can hear it happening, but she thinks it's just like a prank than them having sex, like that kind of thing. So she doesn't get too concerned about it. But in this one, and I think this is the only time they do this, Linda uses a cell phone.
Yeah. Which scientifically proves.
Right. Which scientifically proves that this is in the 2000s, that this is like 2007.
She's like, do you think that I'm a slut? I don't care what Annie thinks. I care what you think. But it's just like, we didn't spend enough time with these characters to give a shit about Linda's relationship to Annie or Lori.
Right.
Let's keep it a G. We're all using the first movie as a reference. We don't give a shit about these characters right now. Linda is Linda because she was Linda in the first one. So everything we know about Linda is from the first movie, from PJ Souls. So I don't know what he was trying to do with that. I guess he wanted them to have like a sad, like the last time she talked to Linda was telling her that she loved her. It's just like you want to like have these dialogues that just don't matter. None of this fucking matters.
Dante, you are absolutely right. You're so right because thus far we've gotten, how much screen time did Linda get? Maybe cumulatively
3
2
minutes.
minutes? 3 minutes, okay? Annie thus far has gotten, she gets a little bit more, but thus far Annie has only gotten like 2 minutes cumulatively of screen time. We don't get these conversations because we get a lot more interaction between Lori and her friends in the original. We get phone calls between them. Everything's just happening really fast, but it has to, right? Because he spent the first hour of this movie that is only an hour and 50 minutes just on prequel stuff. You don't have enough time now to build any relationships. All your relationship building, you spent it on Michael. And so now we don't really care about Lori. We don't have any connection with Lori. He had to cut out a majority of the stalking. We saw Michael one time out the library window, and then we saw him like from behind, like just like his hand and part of his leg from behind when Lori later with her friend, she's like, oh yeah, I think that guy's like following us. And then that's it. He cuts out. She never sees him again. There's no seeing him from her bedroom window. There's no seeing him like from behind the bush. So it could have very well been like, oh, it's just a Halloween prank creep. And then Annie's like, my dad's the sheriff, so get the fuck out of here. And it's over. Like, it could have very well been that. There's no tension built. You don't have time to build the tension.
You're going to this part of the movie like you've seen this movie before, so now you're about to just watch it again.
Sped up,
and it's going to be, instead of creepy, it's going to just be like aggressive.
Extremely aggressive. Yes, you're absolutely right.
She got choked in the first one with the cord. Well, I'm going to just shake the shit out this bitch. And you're going to see all of her titties. You're going to see all of her
vagina.
Snatch.
Yeah. Yes, the snatch. And so, yes, it is a full frontal nudity shot. And it's so funny. I don't know if we mentioned this earlier. I think we did, but I can't remember in what context. This girl only got the role of Linda because she agreed to full frontal nudity. Just like Danielle Harris, a legacy character, she only got the role in the movie because she agreed to
show them titties.
Exactly. So that is a part of it. Linda's butt-ass fucking naked, and he shakes the shit out of her, and she dies. And it's loud, it's messy, the whole thing. And so, yeah, it's like, okay, he did it in an abandoned house. Now nobody is the wiser. That was Michael's 13th and 14th on-screen kills, Bob and Linda. So meanwhile, Dr. Loomis, who is very aware of what time it is, he goes gun shopping. And it's a big fucking gun, too, because he's not fucking around. At Lori's house, because it is Halloween night. So she's sitting on the porch with her mom, and she's handing out candy to trick-or-treaters. Her dad comes out. We get a heartwarming scene of them, and her dad is just telling her to, like, please be careful. It's Halloween night. And she's like, well, I'm just babysitting. And he's like, yeah, well, you never know. They clearly love their daughter, clearly care about her. At this point, she's being picked up by Annie to go babysit at the Doyle's house. And then Mrs. Strode stands up and she goes in the house to light a fire in the fireplace while Mr. Strode finishes smoking his cigarette on the porch. And then out of fucking nowhere.
Girl, look, let me tell you a story. Me and my brother went to see this. That shit scared. I hopped up like, goddamn.
Dante, that is so fucking funny that you should say that because I was watching it on my laptop in my room. It caught me so fucking off guard. My heart skipped a beat. I was like, oh shit, I don't remember this scene. And it's so crazy how quick it was because Mr. Strode is like kind of looking in that direction. Like he's standing out, looking outward. He doesn't even have time to scream. Michael comes up and he stabs him in the throat.
Yeah, because he's done.
He stabs him in the throat and then just like pushes him, walks him, drags him into the house to confront Mrs. Strode. When we get in the house to see him, Mr. Strode's fucking dead.
Over.
It's unceremonious. There's no fanfare. He's fucking dead. It happened so fucking quick. So then he ends up roughing up Mrs. Strode pretty fucking badly. And he's trying to get information out of her, right? Because it's at this point that he picks up a picture and it's Mrs. Strode and Lori is in it. And he's indicating, because he doesn't fucking talk, he's indicating like, where the hell is this girl? Where is she? And Mrs. Strode obviously won't tell him because she's a mother.
She's scared. She's like, not my baby, not my baby, not my baby.
Exactly, because this is, if you think about it just in a real world, if you think about it from a real world lens, this is fucking terrifying. Because, you know, like Lori just left, thank God. But if Lori was here, this hulking, huge, fucking murderous stranger, funky, is looking for your teenage daughter. Very scary. So of course she's not going to tell him. So then he kills her. He breaks her neck, but backwards.
This is what I don't like. Michael comes in and hands her a picture, and it's like, okay. In the original one, Michael was a little boy. He was 6 when he stopped talking.
Right.
We watched this asshole have conversations. Whine, complain. Use your words, mushmouth Mika.
He won't use his fucking words.
And it's like, you know how to talk. There's nothing that happened to make you a mute. He's just an asshole in this movie. He's just a total asshole. Because you just took a vow of silence, and now I don't feel like talking, so you need to understand what I'm doing. If you don't...
So now Joe Grizzly needs to understand that he needs to give up this fucking mechanic suit.
Asshole. A whole asshole.
Yeah. So he ends up breaking her neck by essentially, she's on her knees, and he has her by her hair, and he pulls her head back enough to, like, crack her spinal cord. It's audible. And that's Michael's 15th and 16th on-screen kills.
He is killing motherfuckers in this movie.
Straight up. I think this might be the highest kill count. Or it's either the highest, and it was for a long time, and then...
Kills is crazy.
Right, and then Kills dethroned it. But yeah, it's just in the theatrical cut, I think it's like 22 kills.
He is killing people in here.
And they're super aggressive, too. So, at the Doyle residence, where Lori is babysitting Tommy, did you notice this? Tommy is dressed up like Otis from House of a Thousand Corpses. He has on the red robe, and then he has on that, like, skull, like, painted face.
Makeup.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Isn't that so funny?
Cool. I like those kind of Easter eggs. He didn't have to explain to us what he was. He was just like, if you catch it, you catch it.
Yes. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, shit. I like that. But he asks Lori if she believes in the boogeyman, because he heard that on Halloween night, the boogeyman comes and attacks kids who don't believe in him. This is going to be bothering him the whole night. I won't keep bringing it up, but Tommy does keep fucking bringing it up. Is the boogeyman real? And Lori is just like, no, he's not fucking real. She's laughing it off. And then she gets a call from Annie, who tells her that she is making Lindsay her popcorn, and then she'll be over to drop Lindsay off at her house so that she can spend time with Paul. Annie doesn't notice that Michael is standing right out of the window, watching her. And neither she nor Lindsay notices that Michael actually enters the house. And he stands right behind Lindsay while she's sitting on the sofa watching TV.
And she didn't think to herself that the cat pooped on the in the bed?
Stop. She didn't think to herself, damn, somebody's musty in this bitch. No. Because very similarly to the original movie, Lindsay's like in another world when she's watching TV. Like, she doesn't even hear what's going on around her. And I was like, damn. This fucking dude has to smell like caca. And she doesn't notice. Nobody notices this odor in the house.
But that's like when Bob is killed, and it's like he goes outside. Like, nobody has peripheral vision. Nobody's just looking around. I'm always looking around.
Dante, this is why I thought it was so crazy that they went into the Myers house and they just go in. Like, this door is just fucking unlocked. They're just able to walk in. I would not be able to enjoy myself. I wouldn't be able to like have sex and like with my back facing the doorway because I would be too fucking on edge. My head would be on a swivel because I'd be like, you have no idea who's in this bitch. So I'm just like, they don't notice Michael and their periphery. Nobody has periphery. Nobody has the like spidey senses. Nobody's hair stands up on the back of their neck.
Nobody knows start itching.
No, nobody's like, damn, somebody needs to do laundry. Nobody notices any of these things. And he's just like standing behind her, like gawking. And it's funny. He's watching a movie. But before Annie walks in, he, I guess, steps out of the way. He's so big. He's wearing these boots. I just think it's crazy that he's so agile and fucking Lynx-like. Like, nobody hears this dude. I mean, he's like a ghost. And so that's when they leave the house, and they also don't notice that Michael is like stalking them on the street. He comes out and he watches Lindsay and Annie walk to Tommy Doyle's house, because the Doyles and the Wallaces live within walking distance of each other, very close, like on the same block. Now he knows exactly where Laurie is. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis is trying to convince Sheriff Brackett, Annie's dad, aka Chucky, that Michael Myers is back in town and everyone is in extreme danger. And the sheriff is just kind of like, well, I don't think a dead coyote and a missing tombstone are enough to prove anything. Additionally, he doesn't think that one man could pick up this tombstone. He's like, oh, it weighs like half a ton. And Dr. Loomis is like, you fucking idiot! Are you listening to a word I'm fucking saying?
He's not a man!
I'm telling you, this dude is a fucking monster. He picked the shit up. Like, bitch, this is why you need to be afraid. This fucking dude picked up this damn tombstone. Y'all are in danger. But Sheriff Brackett is like really writing him off, partly because he read Dr. Loomis's book. A lot of people did, and everybody, they've mentioned it just like a couple of times. They think that it was really kind of tasteless. They're giving him like the Gale Weathers treatment, where they feel like he got blood money from writing that book because you're profiting off of a story where people were murdered. And he believes that Dr. Loomis really exaggerated how bad Michael was to sell more books. He doesn't believe that Michael is the monster that Dr. Loomis says that he is. I'm sure that he's probably like, we've encountered a lot of murders. Dr. Loomis is like, no, he's more than that. You don't understand. He's a murderer with no soul. He is the epitome of evil. Like, he has no qualms about killing anybody, anything that stands in his way. He feels nothing. Either way, I feel like Sheriff Brackett should be concerned, whether you feel like he's a run-of-the-mill murderer or a monster. Either way, I just don't think Sheriff Brackett is taking it seriously enough because of his feelings for Dr. Loomis.
And as a cop, aren't you supposed to take all right as serious, you asshole?
Right. But he doesn't like Dr. Loomis.
It's so weird. That's so weird to me.
Right. But Dr. Loomis assures Brackett that, blood money from the book aside, Michael is soulless and he's definitely come back for his sister Boo.
Yeah.
You should trust what he has to say because he knows him better than any living person. He is the last person alive that actually knows any fucking thing about this dude. Because remember, we got those scenes with them. They were very close. Remember, he hugged him and he consoled him when he was upset. There is a relationship there. So it's at this point that I know that we really spoiled it, but in the movie, if you haven't made the connection yet, it is revealed that baby Boo is actually Laurie Strode. She was adopted by the Strodes. So Sheriff Brackett reluctantly calls the Strodes because he personally knows them, but he vowed to keep this secret, that Laurie is this baby from this whole massacre. So he's calling to warn them, but they don't answer, which worries him. So back at the Doyle's house, we get some heartwarming conversation between Annie and Lori. But that's when Annie is picked up by Paul and she's driven back to the Wallace house to go hook up. And while they're hooking up, they don't notice that Michael is in the room with them, stalking them. She is topless, and Michael then grabs Paul off of Annie, just yanks him up, and just really quickly, Michael stabs him in the chest, throws him across the room. That was Michael's 17th on-screen kill. So now Annie, topless, tries to run away, but Michael catches her. Just she makes it out of the front door, but he's on her heels, grabs her, yanks her back in, closes the door. She runs to the kitchen and she grabs a knife and she goes to stab him, but he backhands the shit out of her, knocking her down to the floor. And Annie is pretty small and Michael is huge. So she's really overpowered at this point because she really is doing everything that she can, everything right to try to defend herself. There's just like a big fucking guy. So that's when he starts dragging her back to the living room by her ankle, bloodied and screaming.
Poor Annie.
Poor Annie, yeah. So now Sheriff Brackett and Dr. Loomis are rushing to the Strode's house. And Sheriff Brackett, this is where he explains that he was actually the responding officer the night that Deborah Myers killed herself. And he actually found Boo amidst all of this gore. And he felt like she was so innocent, so sweet. He didn't want her associated at all with the Myers family because he knew that she would always have to live with the stigma of that. So he decided to omit her from the police report, and he drove her to an emergency room in another town, hoping that that would kind of be the end of it. But to his surprise, 3 months later, he finds out from his friend, Mason Strode, that they ended up adopting the baby. And so this like confirms Laurie Strode is Boo.
He was like, ain't that nothing?
I know. Crazy. You didn't drive far enough. So now cutting back to Laurie, as the night is ending, she walks Lindsay back home. And when they enter the Wallace house, they turn on the light. And the first thing they see is Paul hanging in the foyer with a pumpkin over his head. So a hijinksy thing that Michael did for zero reason.
Is that a Easter egg from H2O?
I thought about that. We don't get to see it long enough. I mean, it very well could be, but it would have really been a cool Easter egg if he was like kind of open and we could see the light bulb inside of him. But I think he just has it wrapped around his neck. But Lindsay is screaming at that. Understandable. But Laurie's attention is drawn to the floor where Annie is laying there, bloody, bruised.
But breathing.
She is alive. Michael has not killed her. That's when Laurie sends Lindsay back to the Doyle house. And she's like, get help. And then she runs to go use the Wallace phone to call the police. But what she doesn't realize is that standing behind the front door in the foyer, that's where Michael is actually hiding. So he closes the front door. He comes out, and Annie is trying to scream to warn Laurie. She's screaming bloody murder, screaming Laurie's name, but never the killer is in the house. Or even just, he's here. Like, she's just screaming Laurie. So Laurie is too distracted on the phone with 911 to really pay attention to what Annie is trying to warn her about. And the 911 dispatcher, Sheriff Brackett, actually hears the call over his radio, and he hears that it's the Wallace house, and he already knows what time it is because he knows that Annie is babysitting there. So that's when Michael grabs Laurie, and she's able to get away, And she runs to the patio doors and they're locked, but using her fucking thinking cap, she picks up a chair and throws a chair through those bitches. She's like, fuck their homeowners insurance. I'm breaking out of this bitch. She runs back to the Doyle's house and Michael's really hot on her heels. So she gets to the house and she closes the door, she locks it. And I mean, right after she locks it, I mean, within a millisecond, Michael is fucking huge. He shows up and this scene, it's so funny because he shows up and he's so tall that the window above the front door, his face appears and Lindsay starts screaming bloody murder. And it's so funny because that was her genuine scream because that was her first time seeing Tyler Mane all in the costume and everything. So she was actually genuinely afraid and they used that take.
Oh,
I know, sweet little thing. So she's terrified. So Lori and the kids run upstairs to hide in a bathroom. Michael splinters this door. He turns this door into fucking toothpicks with ease, knocks this shit down. So now they're hiding in the bathroom, which is such a child thing to do because it's like at the end of the day, you have to remember that Lori is only
17.
Yeah, she's only 17 with 2 children, very much children. So they just don't really know what the fuck to do. So they go in the bathroom, close the door, lock it. They all get in the bathtub and just pray that the police can make it here in time. So 2 cops arrive to the house. They come into the Doyle house because I'm assuming that Lindsay called 911 from this house while Lori was calling 911 from the Wallace house. Mm-hmm. So when the 2 cops come in, they go upstairs. They're doing a horrible job. So these are fodder cops. We love them. They're in every movie. They just really kind of walk into the house. One is kind of sweeping the bottom. The other one just kind of comes upstairs. I mean, really not doing a good job of surveying his surroundings. He is outside the bathroom door. She's trying to tell him that the killer is out there. Like he was literally out there 3 seconds ago. But after a very piss poor job of checking the house, the policeman is like, oh, he's not here. He's gone. I need you to unlock the door. But right as she is about to unlock the door, Michael comes up behind the cop and he stabs him in the back. So hard that blood comes out of his mouth. And so then he breaks through the door and the other cop comes upstairs and he tells Michael to freeze.
Why?
Why'd you do that?
Terrible cop.
You have a gun. What are you telling him to freeze for? He literally just murdered a cop in front of you, and now he's going to attack these children. Something tells me this guy's not about to freeze. So, I don't know. I just thought it was silly, but he tells him to freeze. Michael doesn't. Surprise.
Michael does not like to be told what to do.
No.
You remember Danny Trejo told him to go back to his room?
You remember when the principal told him to break it up when he was fighting in the bathroom? And he was just like, fuck you, for no reason? Yeah. So he starts rushing at the cop. The cop gets off one shot before Michael gets to him and he stabs him to death. So that was Michael's 18th and 19th on-screen kills. So then they don't really show how this happens, the logistics of this, but the next scene we cut to Michael has Lori in his arms. I guess he just snatched her up and she fainted because she is passed out in his arms and he's carrying her back to the Myers house.
Which is definitely an Easter egg from the first one, when he carries Annie.
It has the same look. He carries Linda's naked body like that too earlier in the movie. So now Sheriff Brackett is arriving at the Wallace house and he walks in and of course he sees Annie on the ground. She's in really bad shape.
She's dead.
Lindsay and Tommy, they run screaming to Dr. Loomis, who arrives with him, and they're explaining that the boogeyman took Lori. And so Dr. Loomis knows exactly what that means. And then he decides to confront Michael on his own. I'm tired of him doing that. I'm tired of every fucking movie. He's like, I'm gonna confront this big ass fucking murderer by myself. Because he gets fucked around every time.
I just don't understand why. If he quit his job, is he still working?
Like, is he getting paid for these hours?
Do you not understand how I would have been like, I quit for this exact reason?
I guess he probably feels guilty this iteration of Dr. Loomis because it's very shortly after he quits that Michael decides, I'm going to break out.
Is it the same night?
That's a thing. I don't know if it's the same night. I think it's very, very shortly after. But it's hard to tell. So when Lori wakes up, she is at the Myers house. She's in like a cellar area and she sees Linda's naked body lying there under Judith's tombstone, which Michael has set up. There's candles lit. And she tries to wake Linda up to no avail, obviously, because Linda's dead as fuck.
Well, she probably was like, shit, Annie was alive. Shit, maybe you alive too.
She's not.
Girl, she dead. She been dead for hours now.
Exactly. So then Michael walks in and he approaches her and he drops his knife and he hands her a picture of him and her when she was a baby. It's the one that Deborah Myers gave him in the beginning of the movie in the hopes that I guess she'll just read his fucking mind.
Mask? She'll read the fucking mask?
Stop. Right. Well, because he eventually ends up taking it off. He takes the mask off and she is mad confused. She starts screaming, I don't know those people. I was like, girl, I don't blame you because what the fuck is happening right now? Michael.
Use your words.
You don't speak. Okay, whatever.
Why you don't write?
But if you just point to the boy and point to you and then point to the baby and point to her. Just keep fucking doing it until she fucking gets it. Let's use even remedial communication techniques here. She doesn't understand, and so she's scared as fuck. He's not saying a word, and there's a dead girl on the floor right here. Lori doesn't know what the fuck is going on. So, because Lori just is very confused, I mean, she just understands this person is chasing me. He's killed my friend. He's very badly injured another. He has a fucking knife. She just thinks he's a crazy person. So he's sitting there with his mask off in front of her, and she is trying to be gentle with him to like pacify him. But she's really using this as an opportunity to pick up his knife and stab him in the shoulder so that she can break out of the cellar. So now, at this point, he's like, okay, bet. Well, now fuck them and fuck you too. So he puts that mask back on, grabs his knife, and he's like, well, I gave you a chance.
I did everything I could think of to make my point.
I couldn't have been more clear. So he ends up chasing her out of the cellar, and she's running really quickly, so she's not watching where she's going, and she ends up plummeting straight into an empty swimming pool, fucking her leg up.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room. That house had a swimming pool?
Dante, I said the same fucking thing. When I was watching it, I was like, damn, they could afford a pool? In ground, nice as fuck. So now she's trapped because her leg is fucked up and she fell into like the deeper end of the pool. So when Michael comes walking up at the mouth of the pool, she obviously can't get out because the pool is empty. So she can't reach the top. So now Michael is slowly approaching her. She's screaming, terrified. And just then Dr. Loomis gets there and he calls out to Michael to stop. He keeps calling out, but when Michael won't stop, he reluctantly shoots him 3 times until Michael collapses. He then goes, he grabs Lori, he takes Lori to his car, and he loads her in. leaving Michael face down in this empty swimming pool. So they're sitting in the car and they're trying to decompress because a lot has been happening. Laurie asks Loomis if it was the boogeyman, which is a callback to the original movie, to which Dr. Loomis replies, as a matter of fact, I do believe it was. There's just, a split second of silence before Michael breaks through the passenger window and just yanks Laurie out of the car. So he's going back into the Myers house and Loomis chases after him and he stops Michael. He tells him it's not Laurie's fault. It's my fault. I failed you. So Michael just drops Laurie to the floor and grabs Dr. Loomis by his fucking dome and just starts squeezing him. And there's blood oozing from his orifices.
He's like, you know what? Now you say it.
It is your fucking fault.
Because all my problems started when you start saying, I killed those people.
Right. And as we all know, I didn't.
Because I asked my mom how they were doing, and she said everybody's fine. So, this scientifically proves that this is your fault.
Right. So, Laurie is watching this happen, and she uses this as an opportunity to run, and she crawls through a small hole to hide inside of the walls. So now Michael is hunting her, and he's like breaking the walls, trying to find her, but she's able to squeeze out and she finds Dr. Loomis's gun before Michael finds her. He then chases her some more. She crawls up into the crawl space in the ceiling. So Michael does, I guess, the only logical thing he could think of. He just takes like a big fucking 2x4 and he starts demolishing the ceiling to get it to crumble down, to get her to fall. But it doesn't work. She doesn't fall down, but it doesn't really need to because she ends up just falling through the ceiling on her own anyway into another room, really fucking her shit up because she falls like face first. So now she's all bloodied, bleeding from her mouth, her nose. She's confused. Michael appears in front of her and she tries to raise the gun to shoot him, but he rushes her and he tackles her through the window and out over a balcony and onto the ground below. And I actually have a little fact about this scene. So during this scene, before they hit the ground, the movie just cuts to black. And that happened because they had a stunt double that was standing in place of Laurie. And when they hit the ground, that stunt double actually really injured herself, like severely, had to be rushed to the hospital, could not work on the movie anymore. But they used that take on the movie because they lost that stunt double, and obviously budget is an issue here, so they used the take and just stopped it in the movie before she injures herself, but that's why it cuts like that. So when it comes back, they're both fucked up, but she landed on top of him, so she isn't dead, because had he landed on top of her,
over,
she would have been
fatality.
Right. So he isn't dead either, but he is kind of unconscious. So he's laying there under her and she grabs the gun to try to shoot him. But the gun is seemingly empty. She tries 3 times, getting only clicks before he ends up grabbing her arm. But it was on that 4th shot that the gun does fire and she shoots him in the head and then drops the gun and just starts screaming. Hysterically. And it's while she's screaming hysterically, the movie kind of fades into, like, from that scene into the old footage of young Michael and baby Boo when they were growing up, the old home movies, and the credits start to roll over these home movies, and that is the end of the movie. So the kill count,
high.
it's extremely high. So obviously I'm not including Michael. And then Annie doesn't die. So Annie is still alive. He does leave her alive, just really, really badly injured. And I didn't include Dr. Loomis because Dr. Loomis, surprise, only didn't die because there's a sequel to this movie. But Dr. Loomis doesn't die. He's just very injured. In the movie with our kill count, so we have it at 20 on-screen kills. But there are more, so there's the 20 on-screen kills. There are those guards, the other Smith's Grove security guards. There's 2 of them that Danny Trejo finds. They're already dead, so I didn't count those. And then I think so it's 22 died in this movie. And then in the director's cut, there's more. I can't remember if it's like 25 or 29, but it's a lot of kills. This movie has a ton of fucking kills, 20 on screen. The Rotten Tomatoes score for this movie, it's a 28% critic and a 59% audience. And I was like, I'm not totally surprised because I feel like a majority of Rob Zombie's movies are totally different between critic and audience.
Right.
But with that being said, a 59% is like a rotten score. So the IMDb is a 6.0 out of 10 with 130,000 reviews. So some fun facts. Well, I thought this was wild. So when Freddy vs. Jason came out, it was a surprise hit because
Kelly Rowland was in it.
I feel like that had something to do with it. I think everybody was in rare form, and it was Robert Englund's last
hoorah.
Yeah, as Freddy. So after the release of Freddy vs. Jason, so that came out in 2003, Dimension Films wanted to make a crossover with Halloween and Hellraiser. They wanted a young Michael Myers to open the Lament configuration, the box, and they wanted him to be possessed, and this would be the source of his invincibility, first of all, because Michael's always, in every iteration, strong as fuck, just cannot fucking die, and for his insatiable thirst to murder. So then the remainder of the film would have been the Cenobites pursuing him. According to sources, Clive Barker did agree to write the script. I think the producer said that Clive Barker wasn't interested in making it like a mano confrontation because it wasn't going to be like a Michael Myers versus Pinhead type thing, but he wanted to find a place within the movies where Hellraiser and Halloween could like just cross over into each other just like really smoothly. And so that was their idea for it.
Which is not crazy because if you think about it, that would have just been a good follow-up to Halloween 6.
Right.
Since 7 was already a new timeline, realistically, you could have done this movie as a follow-up to Halloween 6.
But, okay, so there were actually a lot of people on board for this, like a lot of, like, the production company on board for this. But they ended up, I think Dimension Films ended up putting out a poll somewhere online just asking people what they thought, like if they would be interested in seeing a Hellraiser Halloween crossover. And I could see why a lot of people would say no, because I think if you're thinking about it like in terms of Freddy versus Jason, which is not a masterpiece, okay? It's silly as fuck. It's campy as fuck. But those franchises are campy as fuck too. So it wasn't I think that movie fit right into a Freddy franchise. But people are thinking like, oh, this is going to make Michael Myers like a joke. It's going to make Pinhead a joke. So I think it's like 52% of the people that took the poll online were like, no, absolutely not. So Mustafa Akkad was like, no, let's scrap it. Like, I don't even want to try. So another fact, so Emma Stone actually was considered for the role of Laurie Strode. She actually auditioned for it.
Isn't it crazy how people's careers go?
It is. It very much is. So another fact. So this is the first movie ever where Michael Myers talks. So in the 8 movies of the original timeline, he doesn't say a word. In this one, he says too much. And that's it, because the only other thing I had was that Sherry Moon's was originally supposed to be Linda.
Girl, say that again just in case they forgot, because my mind is blown. I can't believe he thought that she could pass for a high school student. She just couldn't. She would look old.
Right, it just would have been super fucking silly. So with that being said, final verdict. Do you think it is a hit or a miss?
So this is straight up a miss for me. This is my least favorite Halloween movie. If I had to rank all 13, it is always dead last. I would rather watch Halloween Kills. I would rather watch Resurrection before I watch this. This is so boring as best and bizarre as worst. It's so weird. It's the things I don't like about like Rob Zombie movies intensified. And I think I say this more than I probably should. I don't like seeing the same things over and over again. I would rather see something like Halloween 2 where it's weird, but it's different, and I just like, oh, I watched that, and it was kind of like whatever, than to be forced to see the same things over and over. I know that he was probably held to a tight standard of having to do a prequel plus a new remake, so they call it a reimagining, but it leaves so much to be desired.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I am going to give the movie a hit. I do actually like this movie. I wrote a paper about this when I was in college. I think that as a standalone movie, if you just kind of set aside all your feelings about what it should be, what it's supposed to be, if you don't compare it to the original, I think that it is good. It obviously has its flaws because every single Rob Zombie movie has its flaws, because like we discussed, Rob Zombie really isn't great with dialogue. He isn't great with character development when it's not Sherry Moon Zombie, first of all. And when it's not villains. Yeah, he's really good at villain character development. He's not very good at teenage girl character development. But I think that, like we've stated in the past, and like we said with Halloween 2009, I appreciate his creativity. I appreciate that he brought something new to the franchise. You see very similar scenes, things that happen in the original in this movie, but that is not by his choice. He was held to really tight constraints to remake these scenes in the movie. And I think that he did the very best that he could. I honestly think that if you tapped David Gordon Green in 2007 to make this movie, I think it would have been a scene for scene shot of Halloween 1978. I just guarantee it. And I would have hated that remake. I think most other directors, for the most part, would have made it a scene for scene because they wouldn't have wanted to touch it. They wouldn't have wanted to change it. I think that Rob Zombie gave us the most creative reimagining that he could. And so, yeah, I appreciate it for what it is.
He didn't ruin the franchise for me.
He did not ruin the franchise. And I do hear people say that a lot. I hear people shit on him a lot because of the work that he did on these 2 movies. And I can tell you, with the shit that they've put in these movies, Rob Zombie did not ruin this franchise. I mean, if anything, it's arguable whether you like what he did, but he did breathe life into the franchise, whether you like that life or not.
Because it was there on arrival.
Yeah, and they were searching all over for what to do next, and we could have gotten some crazy shit.
They was going to bring back Jamie. They were going to bring back a character from a different timeline that they completely avoided that was killed in that movie. That's just how bottom of the barrel they were.
So think about what we could have gotten and what we got. And I'm not saying that you have to like these movies. It's okay to not like them. I totally get why. And Rob Zombie is not everybody's taste, which is understandable. But I just feel like we could have gotten a worse movie than this reimagining for sure.
Right.
So yeah, do you want to tell them about the social media?
We have a Instagram. We love it. We have a Facebook, and we also have a YouTube. It's all Did You Get That on Film?
Mm-hmm,
we also have a email, which is Did You Get That on Film @gmail. So if you want to contact us through email, just kind of give us like feedback, maybe episodes, recommendations. We are always excited to hear from our listeners. And if you wouldn't mind, whichever platform you use, if you could just like and leave a review, it definitely helps us.
Right. And we will be back next week with a brand new episode. So until next week, bye.